It is a
Well,
little different.
but he didn't.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, January 14 Board of Education meeting. Mr. Bishop is here, so we're not starting without him. We're going to tinker with the agenda a little bit just because I know there are some guests that would like to get home to their kids. So I will move up item 8.3 on the agenda to just after item 3, and also 8.5.1, which is the graduation requirements, will move up to just after item 6 so that our student representatives can be heard on that. So, first item on the agenda is action on the minutes for the December 10, 2012 regular meeting. Is there a motion with that respect?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion, changes, corrections, additions, amendments? All in favor of approval of those minutes?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
You abstain, thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, Mr. Ireland reviews expenditures.
Expenditures for the month of December are $4,617,552.60. Encumbrances through the end of the year, end of December, are 41.69% of the budget compared to 40.30% in the prior year, which is slightly higher. In terms of items, in terms of salaries, payroll represents approximately 53% of the total expenditures. Employee benefits, workers' comp, and unemployment compensation are slightly higher than the previous year, as are purchase services, including legal services, and higher than anticipated expenditures for special ed. Expected the account for special services to exceed the budget for the year. Tuition especially is, as discussed at the last meeting, is up $194,000 over expenditure that's previously reported at the beginning of the year, sorry. Let's see. Site improvements are down a little bit, or haven't been spent at this particular point in time. Transportation is a result of timing. In terms of other items to note, energy is down about 16%. You could say it's due to the better climate that we've had, but not of the last week. The reason it's down also is because of all the projects that have actually been done in the district in terms of changing over to natural gas, as well as heat and energy efficiencies. That's about it. Anybody has any questions, comments?
They were reviewed, obviously, in the Finance Committee meeting immediately before this. Some discussion was had. Failing any other questions, is there a motion to approve the expenditures for the month?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I then, with the board's permission, would move item 8.3 on the agenda up to this point. That's to act on and potentially approve a $35,000 donation from Calvin Lee PTO for the installation of playground equipment phase 2. There is an item in your packet relating to that. I know there are representatives of Calvin Lee PTO here. I know you love doing this, but why don't you just... Well, look at it this way. It's more fun at this stage than it was probably a year ago, right?
That's very true. That's very true. I think we wanted to just, if we could take 3 minutes, super fast, and just give you guys kind of a little bit of an update. I think last time we were here, we were going to install the web climber, and we asked you to approve our donation for that, and that went in October, and has definitely been the talk of the town and a very great addition to, I think, the Calvin Lee community. Dr. Freeman was very nice and came to our ribbon cutting, and we've had a great relationship with Cliff Gurnham, who was very creative and helped us basically make that installation happen. So we appreciate that. As far as phase 2, I forgot my papers, but I wanted to let you guys see what we were going to buy. But it's a piece of playground equipment by a company called Big Toys, which is one of the best in the industry. And it's one of those horizontal kind of landscapes that has great accessibility, so people of all abilities can actually access it. There's 8 different activities on it, including overhead activity for physical, to build some upper body strength, as well as the way it's just designed will inspire creativity for the older children as well. So we're really thrilled about that, and we were able to get a 25% discount on the equipment given a year-end special, which was really the catalyst to make us initiate this phase a little sooner than I think we had. we're having a little bit of some challenges per se with installation, in the sense that with our web climber, the district was very kind in paying for the site prep work, which, Cliff put in curbing and mulch and all of that. And now we're being asked to pay for that. So we're having to do a little bit of juggling with our money, and we're like down to the penny per se to make it happen. But we were able to get the town, Joe Mazza, to basically agree to do some of the demo on behalf of the school district, which we appreciate, and hope that you'll pass on our thanks as well if anybody sees him around, which is a big savings as well. Having to make a few decisions. We've got some curbing issues, which is probably a better long-term solution. We may have to go in the direction of timbers as far as a barrier, just given our budget situation and trying to get this installed as fast as possible. So with that said, we would love to ask if you guys would approve our $35,000 donation to buy the second phase of the playground equipment.
All right, Mr. Bishop, is that a motion that we accept that?
Absolutely,
It was.
thank you.
And a second?
Yep, go ahead and answer that, Cam, excellent.
And a second?
Second.
Second,
Okay.
yes.
Any questions,
With
comments?
thanks.
This is phase 2 of how many?
It's phase 2. We had phased it out at 3, and I have a feeling that what we're doing in order to get this equipment, and given the number that we're at with our fundraising, is we've had to put off some of our extras and kind of our wish list. Like we had talked about sensory equipment, we had talked about benches, we had talked about addressing maybe a better surfacing issue. When the web climber was installed, pea gravel was put in, which is not ADA compliant, so we have a surfacing issue that we have to address there too. But we're kind of putting that on hold with the idea of let's just get this equipment in and up so people can start to use it. And so I think we may have an addition of another phase to deal with sooner than later. One thing I did want to say thank you to Keith Bishop and Sue Renner and Gary Kaizen and Bill Bloss for buying a brick and supporting our effort. We appreciate that.
Well, I think really the board should be thanking you for the work that you've done. This is one of those projects that really reflects very, very well on not only your school community, but the entire town. Because we just, unfortunately, the budgets are so tight that the amount of money that it takes, and with 7 schools, it's just very, very hard. And in a more perfect world, we'd be able to do much more extravagant and much more interesting playground equipment at all of the schools. But the parents, it's what makes Guilford special. The parents have really stood up, and I'm sure when you started this, it wasn't long until you asked yourself, what did I get myself into?
Yeah, every day.
Yeah. Funny comes up.
Look where we are as board
occasionally.
members.
Yeah. But no, it's terrific. Obviously, we're very, very grateful for what you've done for the community, and not only for Calvin Lee, but the entire community. So the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. With our deep, deep appreciation. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
very much.
everything you've done with
Thank
this.
you again.
Nice work.
Thank you. Thanks.
Item 4 on the agenda is public forum for topics on the board agenda. Anybody? All right. Item 5 on the agenda is communications.
I received a communication from a parent who had addressed us 2 months ago during one of our preliminary budget hearings, inquiring as to when we were going to have a workshop on students with advanced abilities. And I wrote her back saying it would be in February. So she was very happy to hear that and will attend.
I had several communications, one from a parent who, her child is fine, but was choking in one of our cafeterias during lunch last week, and the lunch aides were not equipped to know how to handle that. They managed to retrieve the school nurse, but she came to me simply asking about training of our lunch aides in the event of a child choking. I emailed Paul, who responded extremely quickly, and it turns out that in fact Carol Ott, who is our head nurse, is in fact going to be training all of our lunch aides in the appropriate response to children choking for, I hope, what are obvious reasons, but also in case the available nurse is not available at that moment. So the child was fine, and the response has been really quick, but that was one communication. And I have received 3 communications regarding the school calendar, asking to reinstate the February vacation as a 5-day vacation. One of those 3 mails also included comments about the many half-days and for PD, as well as various holidays that come up at different times. She also commented on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and just noted that she would prefer to see more kind of 5-day weeks and fewer scattered half-days and full days, and again, was one of the 3 asking for a reinstatement of the February vacation.
I'm going to, just because they're not half-days. They've never been half-days. They are
I'm
early
sorry, I should be
dismissal
careful.
days.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. They're early dismissal
Yep.
days, which is
They
an
are.
hour and a half. She was calling them half-days. I
Yeah,
should be
sure.
careful of that. Exactly right. They're hour and a half early dismissal days.
Right. I also got one communication about the calendar as well.
I think we all were copied on that one email.
There was one that we all received.
Yes.
I got a fair number of communication. Anybody else, by the way?
About the
I've got a fair
calendar?
number of communications about the administration's response to Sandy Hook, and what I heard was just uniformly positive. And Dr. Freeman made a decision very, very quickly, without a lot of precedent, without, thankfully, a lot of precedent, but not based on any experience, but just as quickly as word gets out these days. I think Dr. Freeman decided that it was very, very important to let people know what we were doing as a community and as a district, the police and the school staff, and I think that the parents very deeply appreciated not being treated as partners in the education system and in the process, and letting them know what we were doing to take care of their children. That was a scary day. It was a terrible day, and I think anybody that works in public education, or anybody that has kids here, anybody that lives here, it was one of those life-changing days that we're all going to know exactly where we were and what we were doing, and when we heard about it. And I think everything I heard from the administration, or from parents regarding the administration's response was uniformly positive. Just very grateful for being kept in the circle and being told about what was happening.
Thank you.
We're going to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
this.
we're going to talk a
obviously.
little bit more.
Yeah.
But everybody in the system really chipped in. The principals did a fantastic job in the buildings with their schools, in their communities. Lori Hahn did a lot of work through that first weekend to make sure that we were getting information out, and parents communicated back to us, which we appreciated. Thank you.
Any other? Yes.
One other one. I had a communication just asking for follow-up on the online credit policy, and I don't know if maybe the policy subcommittee or Dr. Freeman in the superintendent report could just give us an update if there's any progress on that.
Well, I think that was referred to the superintendent and the policy committee, I think, was it not?
Right.
Last time? Okay.
Yes.
So we can talk about that.
Sure, happy.
Okay, anything else? All right, student representatives, what would you like to tell us?
So just to kind of continue off with the conversation about Newtown, we've been really impressed with how much the students seem to care about what's going on in Newtown. I mean, there's been numerous efforts to try to do things with them, but what we've been really focusing on is trying to avoid inundating them with a bunch of stuff, because they're getting the stuff from all over the world now. So what we're trying to do is not focus so much on what has happened, but helping them assimilate into what they've been doing, into their new school and everything. So we've had ideas passed around with all the class officers and student government leaders got together with Mr. Messeni, and we talked about just things that we could do. So we were thinking along the lines of maybe having each first period class make a poster about their subject, something like social studies, that you see in classroom walls, to help facilitate the entrance into the new school rather than, some remembrance item. But we've also had Action Against Hunger, did a Cranes for Hope fundraiser where we raised a bunch of money that we're going to try to donate to the Newtown food banks, things like that. Quentin Geelan, a member of Gilbert High School, I know other efforts have been going on in the other schools, but he started an initiative to make snowflakes for just the kids in the school, but Newtown said that they have a lot of that stuff already, so we actually donated it to Calvin Lee, so they can have them there.
A good type of wall to remind us that we are supporting other communities, but also we're a tightly knit one that cares about each other, which is really good. Relating to the safety and lockdown drills at the high school, this past week we had a lockdown drill, and once again I'd love to thank you, Dr. Freeman, for keeping in contact with us throughout that whole adventure, because it did feel really community oriented, which was what we needed. And so we had a lockdown drill, a lot of police presence there, and things went extremely smoothly. They reported that it was one of the best that they had seen, which is wonderful to hear. Believe it or not, it was inspiring how the attitude of the students during the lockdown was so not scared, but there was almost a feeling of support rather, and also like a memorial type thing, which was really beautiful to see from people our age. In addition, we also have all of the doors around our school will now be locked. There's 64 doors at the high school. They'll be locked at all times. Nobody's going to be walking outside during passing times anymore. After the incident, we had police at the doors blocking everyone, and in the main office we now have a security guard who stands there and welcomes people in to go to the main office. So safety precautions are being made. Mr. Masendi's had a lot of conversations with us about how to deal with that if anything like what happened at Sandy Hook was to happen, God forbid, would happen, then how we should deal with it. And in the month to come, we'll be studying how we'll deal with it during passing times and also during lunches. So what needs to be happening is happening. And the community of the Guilford High School students, it's nice to know that this isn't something that we're going to let go by, and that we're really dealing with it appropriately, which is good. But on the bright side, I'll pass things over to Drew, and we'll tell you some exciting things that are going on at the high school.
Well, 2013 looks like it's going to be a pretty eventful year here at the high school. This is the last week of the second quarter, and next week will be midterms after Martin Luther King Day. And also, starting today, is the auditions for the spring musical, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. We're all really excited for that. So.
Also, last year, we had some sophomores looking forward to their junior prom come and talk about getting that moved off campus, and just happily able to report that they actually got a place booked off campus for the same price that they had for on campus, making a few adjustments and compromises, but they're really excited about that. For us seniors, we're actually trying to mix things up this year and get a live jazz band maybe, or a swing band, and get almost like a 1940s feel to it.
We're going to go classy, everyone.
That's what we're looking for.
In addition to what's going on in the musical and theater aspects, as you guys know and have been presented with, the Washington, D.C. trip for the choirs is coming up next month, which is so exciting because we should be so honored that we've been invited to sing at the Kennedy Center, because my goodness, if there's any venue that singers need to be singing at, the Kennedy Center is definitely one of them. And so there's going to be about 150 of us going. We have been doing a bunch of fundraisers all throughout town and are so pleased to see so much support from everyone. And also, in addition, we wanted to invite you guys to a fundraiser that Unified Sports and the Best Friends Club will be hosting on Wednesday night. It's $10 per person at Farina's, which is right on Route 80, a wonderful little Italian place, cute and homey. And it's a beautiful fundraiser for people so that they can have good, so that they can go off and make good friends with people who are in the special education program. It's a really fun partnership that our school has.
What is that again, excuse me?
On Wednesday night, they're having their Farina's fundraiser, and it's being hosted by Unified Sports and the Best Friends Club at the high school. My pleasure.
This year's sophomores are also preparing for CAPT, which will take place in March. This might be the penultimate year for CAPT, and starting next year, Common Core state standards will be implemented, so next year's freshmen will have to learn about that and sort of adjust to that, and it looks like it will end up well.
Double whammy there. Also, happily able to report that We had 600 kids on the honor roll this quarter, which is more than half of the school, which is...
They're all on a roll.
We haven't had that many people in 4 years, so that's really exciting.
I'm sorry, that's
Well
about
said.
as bad as it gets.
In any case, it's great news.
And so, on to the elementary schools. Melissa Jones, which is a great place to learn and grow. They've been spending their Thursday mornings doing their bird watching, and now they spend Monday mornings playing chess, which is a great thing to learn from an early age, especially because of strategies and all. In addition, the first grade has been reading books and writing letters about them to their teachers, and second grade's working on their Spanish, and you walk by the classrooms and you can hear them talking about their families in Spanish, which is awesome because they're in the second grade. And the third grade class at Melissa Jones made marine animals, and they made reports on them. And then the fourth graders, listen how cool this is, the fourth graders are writing opinionated reports on child labor. How cool is that? Like, talk about mature students. But what's even cooler is that they're using various articles and documentaries. And the fourth graders at A.W. Cox as well are working on child labor. So all of our fourth graders will be having some pretty hefty conversations coming up. The third graders, also at A.W. Cox, had their second annual Cox Aquarium, where they each get to pick a sea creature, and they made it and hung them all around the school, and then wrote reports on them. And at A.W. Cox, they also had the Snowman Challenge, where each room was given a 6-foot-tall snowman and was told to design it in a way that would influence the school, to show kindness and good behavior to all. And it became this fun competition. So the school's covered with snowmen joy. And that's it from Melissa Jones and A.W. Cox. So have a great month of January coming up.
I think that's all for us, but if you guys ever need a spokesperson, Leah's your girl.
Thank you.
Actually,
Thank you
guys,
for your enthusiasm. We appreciate
and we actually
it.
wanted to ask if you had a few minutes. The next item is going to be to talk about high school GPA
Definitely.
policy. If you would stay around, I think the board would appreciate your voice in that conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, with the board's permission, why don't we just go ahead and look at 8.5.1? That's Mrs. Dudley as part of the policy committee agenda, or part of the meeting. But there is, I gather, a proposal to amend the graduation requirements policy. Have you all seen the?
Yeah, we're taking a look. I actually have a few questions on it, just for some of the things that have been crossed out. Under 1.1, there's a blue highlighted section about civics and world issues that's been crossed out. What does that signify?
The underlined part?
Underlined? Blue lines.
Underlined or cross-out? The cross-out is delete, it was a proposed deletion from the
Proposed
existing
deletion, so
policy,
you're-
and if it's underlined, that's a proposed addition to the existing policy.
Okay.
Right.
That
I believe-
particular one was, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. That, I believe we crossed out simply because it says beginning with the class of 2004, and that's no longer a necessary.
Okay.
We just
Do you
added.
understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wait, why don't you
So
just,
up above, where it says social studies, it includes the topics, and then we
Sure,
didn't
it's in
need
there.
that sentence, so it was just crossed out.
It's almost redundant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mrs. Dudley, why don't you just summarize what the proposed changes are, and then we can chat about it.
All right. They are proposing to change from an 18-point scale, which is difficult to understand and interpret, particularly from colleges when transcripts are sent, to a more common 4.0 scale, which most people remember and can remember from college and understand better, and the colleges themselves, when transcripts are sent forward, have familiarity with it. So it would make the transcripts much easier to understand and have more common to other institutions, colleges, etc., high schools. So they want to change to the 4.0 scale. The addition that we have is, we got a letter, the policy committee got a letter from Mr. Vicenti, who said that he believed that they were ready to institute this earlier than is in the proposal
reading.
right now, we're going to begin with the class of 2014 rather than 2015, which makes, to me, makes a lot of sense. We just have to change that sentence in there about initiating it. But that's what it's basically about.
Mr. Macenti and representatives from high school guidance are here to answer questions tonight if there's questions about the overall policy change or that specific detail as well.
Why don't we
Mr.
just ask them
Macenti,
to
do
come
you
up?
want to come up and...
You know, if you'll allow me to do this, I'd like Tammy Lazat to come forward as well, our department chairman for guidance, as well as Mark Garino, our assistant principal. Both were really an integral part of making this happen. And, you know, when I came to them about doing this, the three of us really worked diligently on this. And I think probably the best way this evening is to bring you through it as quickly as we can, but as thoroughly as we can, as we did with the Policy Review Committee. You know, back in, I think, 1982, 1984, they came up with a 12-point system in the school. I don't know, we can't find anybody in the building that knows why or who began that, but they went to an 18-point system when teachers decided to move to minuses and pluses. Before it was just an A, B, C, D, F, and now they went to A pluses and A's and A minuses. So someone in the math department came up with the 18-point scale system. And again, we just can't find anyone who really can tell us the rationale behind that. But when I began talking with our school counselors, and I'm going to let Tammy really do the speaking on that behalf, you can see that we have to send a cheat sheet along to colleges so that they can understand what an 18-point scale really means. And where are we putting our kids on a level playing field with other kids from around the state or across the country? And I do want you to talk to our students before we walk away from here this evening, because I think they have some strong opinions about it as well. But with that, I'll turn it over to Tammy. She'll give you some background in terms of what goes on in our school counselors department as it relates to our scale.
I'm not really sure what I can share, other than the fact that we've been talking in guidance for, well, I've been here 17 years, so we've been talking about changing this scale for a long time. And part of what we do is communicating with the people outside, and specifically colleges, and my biggest issue is scholarship programs, is how our 18-point scale is very difficult to translate, to give our students an equal opportunity to be viewed against their competitors. And we talk all the time with parents and students and teachers and members of colleges and scholarship programs about what this 18-point scale actually means to anyone. There's no easy way to be able to cross, multiply, and divide to get it on a 4.0 scale to help them understand it. Even filling out a simple application, 18.0 doesn't appear as an option anywhere. So very often they have to leave their grade point average out, and then we have to follow with some kind of written statement that says this is where they are. And it's very difficult on a grand scale to be able to share that information and have people understand it and let our kids really have a shot at being viewed as equals. To be able to just explain it to the students themselves when we're doing this college process so that they can evaluate themselves against the standards of those colleges is extremely difficult. And then we add the parents to that mix. And it really, we're just not talking the same language to the people that count outside of here. And it really is unfair to the student body, I think. I'm not sure what else to- Well, and I'll tell you from my personal experience, I've been to many conferences and talked with many colleges, and my biggest concern was when the University of Virginia laughed at us and said that they didn't even understand 18.0, and when they do evaluate kids from this area, it's a Connecticut phenomena, and they don't even consider it. And then when we talked to Yale recently, they filled out a piece of paper and called us wacky. So I didn't really think it was really a good way to publicize ourselves. So that's why we're here. So.
Thank you.
If you have any questions about us, just our experiences with it.
Mr. Greeno, I think, wants to.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, my comments will be very short. Really, what I just wanted to share was kind of the process that we went through and the schools that we looked at in Connecticut and Massachusetts and really across the country, really to kind of take a look at those different scales that were out there. And what this does, it really provides us, as Tammy said, to really have more of a common language and really kind of put our students on a more level playing field. And I don't think you'll find really there's no universal scale that's out there that every school uses, but clearly this puts us in line with that, and those are the proposed changes that we feel have been part of a topic of conversation for many, many years here at Guilford High School and what it actually means. And Tammy and the work that she does with our students and with our family really sees the impact. And even speaking to our students, you can hear from them of the impact that it has. And they've been waiting for this, and it makes more sense to them. It's going to make more sense to schools. And I think it's a very, something for you to consider in terms of this evening.
I do have a question. I was on the policy committee, I'm on the policy, so I've heard part of this presentation before, but I do want to ask a question again, which I did ask then as well. One of the other changes I noticed at that time and bring to our attention here is that the point difference between level 1 and level 2 has been altered in this process. So presently the point difference is basically a full grade difference. An A in a level 2 class is the equivalent point to a B in a level 1 class. And that has been shortened here with your suggestions. And I'm wondering if you could speak to the reason for that.
Well, I think what we want to do is be able to keep the scale consistent as you went from the A to the B, and there's 3 different grades in there. And I think there was a lack of consistency and structure within that 18-point scale. That when that decision was made, when we had the 3 levels to be able to accommodate those different variances and differences with what the experiences were like in the classroom. And I think really what this really brings is a kind of a refreshing kind of look at the type of quality of learning that we want to have in the classroom. And there was a need to have those differences, and I can't speak to what happened back in the early 1980s, but really to kind of take a look at, this particular structure provides consistency all the way through the scale. I don't know if that answers the question.
I mean, I think it does. I mean, a little bit. I mean, I guess the question is what the change in the point difference suggests is that we're communicating that level 1 and level 2 courses are far closer in rigor than the point system exists now.
Yes.
And I guess my question, and my question about this is really twofold. One, is that true at this moment, or is it that we're expecting that to be true with the Common Core? Because I think that's 2 different things. And I'm asking it because if we're instituting it now and I brought this up in the policy committee as well, if we're instituting it now for kids who are juniors, while we only publicize a decimal rank, there's going to be some shifting in rank at the margins for some kids here. And I wonder if there's going to be some pushback from those particular kids or those kids' parents.
Well, let me maybe address.
That's a 2-pronged question, I recognize, sorry.
Why am I fielding all this?
I got you at
Mr.
the
Pacini,
mic.
why don't you stand there? Being a former classroom teacher in the role as administrator now, and I think your question is this question of rigor. And clearly, I think that a lot of things have changed when it comes to rigor and the introduction of the principles of learning, the work we've done with that, the impact that it's had on the classroom, and clearly the support and the continued push I think that the Common Core will have there is increasing that conversation, is really requiring teachers to look at what's going on in the classroom. So I think we're well positioned to support both the work that have been doing for the past several years and the work we're going to continue to do.
Okay,
So
that does answer my question, because I certainly understand it moving forward. The point is for the students who have done this work already in the last 2 or 3 years, to bring those 2 levels together, is that misrepresenting, for instance, what level 1 has done in the past couple of years versus level 2? If not, then what we're doing is a service to recognizing changes that have already occurred.
I don't believe so.
We've had that conversation, and
I'm sure you have, or you wouldn't have gone here,
Yeah,
right?
we do think this honors the rigor that Mark referenced. I think we are especially in our honors courses that we offer as well. And I think this grading scale reflects that. And
Oh, go ahead.
I do think it's going to align with what we're going to be doing with the Common Core.
And so then the second question was, because the previous level 1, level 2 had a 3-point difference across and now has a half a point, or 1-point difference across and now has a half a point, there will be shifting in ranks, literal number ranks, I would think, from a statistical point for juniors who were told at the end of their sophomore year that they were in a certain decimal, and now at the margins, for some of those kids, that could change.
Technically, there's no shifts because we haven't reported class rank to anybody. We haven't done that for this current junior year. In fact, the first time we're going to do that will be probably sometime
Oh, they
in
don't hear
February.
hear something at the end of sophomore year?
No,
No.
they've
Oh.
never been given a rank.
We start,
My apologies,
That's
I was
okay.
totally under
No,
the wrong
that's-
impression.
nope, we haven't, and one of the things that we'll be able to do, there is a junior parent night coming at the end of this month, and that will allow Tammy really to be out in front of the community to really talk about this and give us the opportunity to run that with these new, with this new
Super.
grade scale.
I mean, I have to say that in terms of the actual numbers, I mean, a 4.0 scale makes a huge amount of sense. And I must say, as a member of the policy committee, I did do, after you came the last time, did my own kind of internet searching of area schools. And clearly, things differ in various schools, but going to something that most of us are used to communicating in makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you for answering my questions.
Not just to support the scale, but to support the other requests that we begin with the junior class. Our faculty are behind it. I want you to hear from the kids as well before they walk away this evening. And my biggest concern was the communication piece with our stakeholders. And because we have a junior
Thank you, Mr. Masenti.
Because we have a junior parent meeting coming up in a couple weeks, we think it's a real opportune time to take the stress out of any one's concerns about college applications or graduation requirements, where we can get going with this in a couple weeks with our junior class, who need to hear it first and foremost as quickly as we can, and then move on to really share this with all our stakeholders. So I'd ask you to please move forward with this so that we can begin this. It's a long time coming. It's probably as big maybe as the new class schedule that we implemented several years ago, and but I think it's long overdue for our school community.
Students, yes, students, do you have something you want to add to this?
Well, I think we can unanimously say that the only complaint we have is that we don't get the scale. It puts us in a world of standardization for these college applications. It puts us right where we should be standardized with a lot of other schools around the country, because also what we fear is that maybe that we want to be seen on the same playing field, but we also don't want to be seen at a lower playing field than when compared to a 4.0, because what can happen is when you see a marginal change in a 4.0 scale, it means a lot more, right, than a marginal change on, like, from a 17 to an 18. A 3 to a 4 says a lot more than a 17 to an 18. So when a college sees that somebody has a 14 and that's still a minimum requirement for an honors here, they're seeing a 4-point drop from where they could be, and that can be misconstrued just by innate preconceived notion that this kid isn't as good as a student as he actually is. So that's from our point, this would relieve a lot of anxiety toward that particular part of it. And also some of the weighting, which seems a lot more fairly represented for AP and honors courses, is that for an honors course now, at an 18 scale, you get a 0.25 add-on for that class. But that holds the same for a 4.0 scale. So that's actually going to have a lot more weight, which we think it merits
Completely necessary.
compared to what it has now.
Agreed. And as we said, there's no more of this could not have been a more perfect time to make this change. And honestly, it stinks because you're online and you're looking at a scholarship and they're like, you need a 3.5 for this. And then you have to send them the email that's like, well, I'd love to tell you that I had a 3.5, but I actually have
16.
And then the other thing is it's so much more work for our guidance department. And if we could give them the relax on the CPA thing, then they can have more time to work on this stuff, like the recommendations. Has so much more of an influence and that type of thing. Although their recommendations are beautiful now.
I love listening to Aaliyah speak.
So I hope that you take our thoughts into consideration, but honestly, this is the right thing to do. I come from a high school that did a 4.0 scale, and it just makes sense. It really does.
Just relieves a lot of anxiety as students.
Thank you, guys.
Was there any constituency whatsoever for keeping the 18-point scale?
No. I'm taking an AP stat course right now, and I can tell you that even if there was a little bit of unreliability on the independent variable, if we stood in the front door of the class and marked down every single person who said that they wanted to keep the 18-point scale, my paper would literally look like this.
It just wouldn't happen. I think we're all a little bit confused by it as it is, so we're all in favor for it.
My question is, what took you guys so long?
I know. But you know what? It's the present, and that's the only thing that we can
Like
control.
we said,
So let's do it,
our only
everyone.
complaint is that we don't get it. But we don't have to worry about that now. It's all sent out. So.
We're being taken good care of, which is
Yeah.
good.
So, Mr. Ireland, that's a motion? A motion that we adopt this proposed amended regulation. Ms. Dudley,
And I'd
second?
like to second that, yes.
We do need to amend the year.
Yes,
we need to
With-
amend the
Amend the year.
amendment.
Instead of 2015, it should read 2014.
Right. So with that amendment, friendly amendment accepted by Mr. Ireland, is there any other discussion?
The only other quick comment is this is obviously one piece of the whole college, admissions experience. So I think our students have done great for the numbers of years that have been in place as well, including if Yale can be termed as wacky, then we've had quite a number of placements that have been, kids aren't wacky, but they've gotten in. So all in all, there are, fortunately people do understand it, or the explanations have gone out there, but I wholeheartedly agree that it's time and place to vote affirmatively and make this change.
All right, so all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much, and I'm sure
Thank
you've
you
got
for
homework or
staying late.
something, so.
Glad to hear it.
Happy January.
Well, thank you for all your work on this, and glad we could at least get it done tonight, if not last year.
That's good. Thank you.
Want to keep that .1 point.
All right, we are back then to item 7 on the agenda, and I should recognize and welcome Jason Bowden is here this evening, our new Assistant Superintendent for Operations. We want to welcome you to the district, and happy you could be here with us tonight. There's a piece of paper in our file that I thought I'd never see.
Yeah.
Which is a resignation letter by Andy Pt1. I think I just didn't think I'd ever see that. So I obviously my guess is Andy's going to have to be talked into any kind of formal acknowledgement by the board, but I'm sure Dr. Freeman will do his best to get him here at some future meeting, or somewhere in any event, at some meeting to really recognize his years and years of service to the town of Guilford. There are very few people that have given as much to this community as Mr. Pt1. So, but welcome. We are delighted that you've decided to join us, and as we move forward. So, Dr. Freeman, your report.
Thank you. And we do have a number of items to share tonight. Like you, Mr. Bloss, I wanted to start by welcoming Mr. Bowden. Like you, I don't think it's possible to overstate the contributions that Mr. Pt1 has made to this school system. I have entered into negotiations to try to have him allow us to say farewell to him in the appropriate way, and I will let you know what the results of those negotiations are. Jason has been with us for approximately 2 weeks, and I am happy to report that he is transitioning seamlessly into the district. He has already joined the leadership team as we are moving the district forward. He has been involved thoroughly in budget preparations from the day that he entered, actually from a couple weeks before he entered through tonight. He is a part of our evaluation committee, working on the new evaluation template that we will be presenting to the state. And I know that he's made an effort to be in every school and meet with every principal and be visible around the school district. And I can't tell you how happy we are to have Jason on board. Seems like a long time waiting to have him in the position. We're very happy to have him on board. So welcome again. Thank you. I did want to spend just a few minutes broadly to touch on a topic, Mr. Bloss, that you've mentioned already. Security has been a topic of concern in Guilford since December 14th. I do want the board to be aware, and I want the community to be aware that we have been intimately involved with the Guilford Police Department and with the town since the events of the 14th. In fact, Chief Tarabile and I were on the phone as early as noon on December 14th talking about what needed to happen. I can't thank Mr. Mazza or Chief Tarabile enough for the support that they have offered us and continue to offer us as we move forward. We had a community forum on December 20th. I believe that about 100 community members came out to ask questions, to make suggestions, and to share concerns around security. It was a very positive meeting. Nobody came out to criticize or to complain. People came out to share their ideas and to talk about what we can do as a community moving forward. One of our goals has been communication, and our goals moving forward continue to be around relationships, not exclusively. There are elements of physical plant that go into security, but I continue to firmly believe that relationship remains an integral part of feeling safe and being safe in a community and in a community school. As we continue to work with Guilford Police, we are continuing to focus on police presence, and we have increased police presence on our properties and in our schools, but also on communication and relationship. Our principals have almost daily contact with police officers. We have increased patrols, and police are making a concerted effort to be both more visible in our schools and to be more actively engaged when they patrol our schools. And I want to thank the Guilford Police. I want to thank Chief Tarabile. I know that the principals have appreciated the contact, and I have heard from teachers and from parents and in fact from students who like seeing the police and seeing them as part of the community, not somebody who comes when there's a problem to respond to. We are receiving weekly updates from the Guilford Police Department about their visits to the schools and in fact about what they find. We've asked them to consult with us as the police move through our schools. If they want to compliment us, as they did at the high school on the drills that we practiced, that's information we'd like to have. And if they see things in the school that raise questions or concerns for them, they're sharing those with us as well. Mr. Gurnham and Mr. Bowden and I have begun touring all of the schools to do an evaluation of our current security status. And I did note earlier in the finance meeting there may be some adjustment to bond requests this year if we feel that we need to make some changes to the physical plants as we move forward. And Mr. Gurnham and Mr. Bowden and I spent last Monday in Southington at the statewide symposium on security. We were able to talk with experts from across the country. We were able to talk with people who have sadly been through situations that are at least similar to what occurred in Newtown and learn from their experience. And I'm happy to report that in the broadest sense and in the broadest strokes, we're doing the right things in Guilford. We are engaging in the right conversations. We have the right policies in place. We have things that we can do better, and we'll continue to focus on those. We're reviewing all of our safety protocols now. We are re-drilling and re-practicing in all of our schools. We are collaborating with the police and asking for their advice as we do that re-drilling and as we revisit the protocols. But again, in general, we didn't hear anything on Monday at that symposium that we weren't doing. We may have heard nuances of how we may do things better moving forward, but I was very pleased to come away saying that we are offering our students a safe school environment, and I feel confident saying that. I know that we have an executive session item to talk in some greater detail about some of those things, but I did want to give you that at least brief update. I also am happy to turn this over to Dr. Keene, who's going to share the math curriculum update. I'm not alone in it.
You know, before we get into that, can we just go back to the presentation in Southington, the conference, because I know there were a lot of people there. Can you just, Southington, right?
Southington, yes.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit more about what is the, you know, what are the responses that districts in Connecticut are taking to what happened? What are the experts recommending? I guess that's probably more important.
Sure.
And recognizing, I've talked to Dr. Freeman a little bit about, there's some things that we're doing that we're not going to talk about publicly because, recognizing we're trying to
Security
draw a
is
line
needed.
between letting parents know exactly what we're doing. On the other hand, you don't necessarily want to say publicly everything I know there's some details we've talked about that we continue to talk about in executive session that could directly, that we've been asked by the police not to talk about,
Yes,
frankly.
exactly.
So I think we have to honor that, and so short of that, what...
In broad strokes, sure, I'm happy to. And maybe I should describe the meeting a little bit. Nearly every school district in the state of Connecticut was represented at this meeting last Monday. Many police departments were represented at this meeting. Superintendent Janet Robinson from Newtown was present at the meeting and participated in the meeting. Senator Blumenthal, Commissioner Pryor, and Secretary Duncan, who joined us electronically, couldn't be there physically, but addressed us electronically. And then there were a number of experts, and the experts spoke about prevention, response, and recovery, essentially, and they broke it into those areas. School districts in Connecticut are doing many of the things that we're doing. They're reviewing their lockdown procedures. The best advice that we receive continues to be that schools have plans for emergencies, and emergencies of all stripe and all color. And schools are continuing to practice evacuation drills, which remains the most common drill. There's something wrong in the building, a gas leak, a fire, smoke, and the safest thing to do is to evacuate the building as quickly as you can to safe locations. And so schools will continue to practice traditional fire drills or evacuation drills. There are also drills that require students to be able to lock down or shelter in place, and those are the drills that we're running now because something dangerous is in the proximity of the school and you need to lock down the perimeter and keep students inside, or something dangerous is in the school and you need to essentially have the ability to lock students into cells and make each of those cells as difficult to enter as possible. In general, our policies fall in alignment with what we're being asked to do by the experts. You take an all hazards approach. You try to identify every eventuality from flood to earthquake to tornado to dangerous person who enters our school, and you talk with the students and you talk with the population calmly and openly about what we do in these eventualities. At the same time, in prevention, you need to look at your facilities, and you need to try to ensure that the facilities are manageable, that there is an appropriate level of security, that you can lock all of the perimeter doors. You heard from our students how we have changed some of what we have done in this high school just over the last few years. This high school is large, it is sprawling, and in many locations, it is a shorter line from point A to point B if you can go out one door and in another, cutting across some of the back area. And in recent years, as the schools become more crowded and more difficult to work with, we have allowed that. We are not allowing that any further. All of our schools, with the exception of the high school, are locked, and you need to request entry during the day. And following the events of December 14th, now the high school is locked, and you need to request entry during the school day. We don't have technology to provide that, so we have a staff member who will staff the front door of the high school, and you need to knock now to enter in. So all schools are reviewing those physical attributes around security, and they're looking at their procedures. Mental health and the support of the community continues to be a big piece of prevention. We heard repeatedly that when students feel ownership of the school environment and when students feel that adult staff members are approachable, that we can often avoid incidents before they happen because students will report to the appropriate adults. That may not be true in situations like Newtown, but it is true, and it has been true in Guilford and in towns like Guilford, that we've avoided situations where students may make poor choices because concerned friends come forward and say, I know somebody and that person is struggling right now and I'm afraid they may not make a safe decision. And that remains an important prevention approach. We talked quite a bit about the drills themselves, and then we talked quite a bit about recovery. How do you support students who have gone through a crisis, and not just the students in Newtown, but students in Connecticut in general? All of our students may continue to have questions, may continue to have concerns around this, and we continue to provide counseling support to our students in all of our schools who may have continuing concerns around this. It was an 8-hour meeting. We heard from people from all over the country. There was healthy question and answer, and we're continuing those conversations both on a regional level with neighboring districts as well as in district with our leadership team. I don't know if that answered the question.
Well, yeah, and I think the point is that we're at the beginning of what's probably going to be a bit of a process to really decide what's the most appropriate thing to do, not just responding to this, but responding to the all of the security-related issues that we have to address, plus what's the General Assembly going to do? And that's another possibility. I forgot that this is our historic meeting to have the General Assembly representatives.
And they
just
are
forgot that, frankly, but we'll try to get them in. It's a short session, I think, this year, isn't it?
That's a long one.
Is it a long one?
Senator Meyer and I will be meeting to talk about security concerns because the General Assembly will be addressing security, and he's already contacted me and asked if we can have a conversation before he begins to engage in the conversations in Hartford. And I very much appreciate our representatives including us in those conversations, and so that's an
Well, I think
opportunity
maybe we
that
should
I'm excited
invite
about.
them. We should invite them to our
We
February
should.
meeting. And not living in North Guilford anymore. Vinnie Candelora is the rep in North Guilford now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it would be Mr. Candelora, Senator Meyer, and Representative Whittle. That's right, because Noreen Corcarudo would have been North Guilford. So she's
Would have.
right. Okay, all right. So maybe we can put that on the agenda and see if they're available.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to talk about this obviously a little bit more tonight in executive session, and then we'll continue the conversation. I think this is probably going to be a recurring agenda item moving forward for us. So anyway, I'm sorry to derail your math curriculum discussion, but
That's perfectly okay. Tonight, or last November, during your workshop, Maria Carreri, our math specialist, worked with us around the Common Core State Standards in mathematics. And she has been leading a team, a committee, in order to update our curriculum document. This is not about acceleration. This is not about how we sequence the courses, but this is just about the grade level expectations and aligning them to the Common Core State Standards. I sent a draft to you in middle of December so that you would have a chance to kind of begin digesting. And Ms. Carreri is here tonight, as well as Donna Polinsky, who is the chairperson of the math department at Guilford High School, and Barbara Tokarska, who is a math teacher at Guilford High School and has been working very closely with the Common Core State Standards. This is our first curriculum document that will be aligned, and we hope to have it ready for you in the spring for approval. Tonight's document is really not about approval, because it looks different than our other curriculum documents in that there is a lot more background knowledge around the topics. There are fewer topics, but there's a lot more background knowledge around them before the committee continues to go in and make all of the assessments and creates the performance tasks to go with each one. We wanted to make sure that the board was supportive of the new process and, before they continue to really invest a lot of time and energy. Now's the time that says, way back off, or we like the work that you're doing, we see the purpose of it, and that's why we wanted to do some workshops with you in the fall, get you this information as early as possible. And Maria and Donna and Barbara are here tonight if you have specific questions around the changes.
do we at this point?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Well, I guess that's a good sign.
We wanted an interim opportunity for approval moving forward. We didn't want to get all the way down to the end and then say, but this looks different. So we wanted to give an opportunity for interim encouragement along the way.
Why don't you? The three of you are here. Why don't and, you know, this is,
Do you
it's
have
like what we
anything
do.
you'd
Why
like
don't- yeah,
to
come-
address to us?
Just come on up if you will, and just maybe just,
Tell them how this is better than what we had.
well, and just to give you a little bit of background, the last time we did it wasn't so much a math curriculum change, but it was a resources change when we adopted the Everyday Mathematics program. It was, you know, and I think as it turned out, that was a good decision. You know, certainly judging from where we were with our math. I'm not going to say that the only thing is scores, but looking at least at the math scores, they have markedly improved. You know, and I know that's for a lot of reasons. It's because of Phyllis Olstein's excellent work through the years, and the work of the teachers and the administrators. I mean, right, we're totally on top of that. But we've made great advances in mathematics in the past 6 or 7 years. And just, I guess the one question would be, how is this going to continue that and keep it moving forward? What are the advantages of this curriculum compared to what we have now?
Well, similar to Everyday Math in that it got everyone on the same page when prior to that everyone was all over the place. Now with Common Core, not 100% aligning to Everyday Math. We needed something else to support teachers and keep them on the same page without abandoning Everyday Math. How are we going to use that to meet the Common Core? So by having units within the curriculum that will keep everyone together, we'll be able to gather materials along with Everyday Math to support the new work that's being done. So it was needed to keep everyone on the same page.
Okay.
I think also in how it deals with the standards and the idea that we're trying to get students to understand things more conceptually than just procedurally. If you have that deep an understanding, the test scores will follow.
And teachers, by building in that background knowledge for teachers, it's going to allow them to have access to it all in one place, what they're doing for each unit, what's the background content knowledge that some of them may not have or be as familiar with, along with the resources for each unit.
One of the things as we're working is really trying to make this a teacher-friendly document that really works.
Please.
So, speaking from the teacher's perspective, I think it's really important for us to be able to have a document that is well aligned and very directly aligned with the Common Core, so that we do have that kind of cohesive presentation that the Common Core intends, and that teachers can access and use and implement fully and productively.
Okay. Well, I mean, Dr. Keene, what you're looking for from us tonight is just a keep working.
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
All right. Does anybody think they should not keep working?
Working in this direction.
Yes. Really, it's to respond to your questions, to say, I mean, I really believe they're going in the right direction. It does look a little bit different because there's so much background knowledge and that amount of support for elementary teachers who are not mathematicians by nature, but who are expected to teach math and science and social studies and the English language arts. But it's just like going back and thinking about our collaborative culture, and when you heard tonight that every third grader has been researching ocean animal life and actually synthesizing multiple sources to put together an informational report. And every fourth grader is getting ready to write and to read argumentation around child labor. And these are part of the units. And all the second graders last spring worked on a nutrition unit together. And what is the best way to eat? And that was really developing opinions at that time. So it's the same thing is true in mathematics. So that when we're all working together around, particular concepts or particular skills, that we can collaborate together, and that we're going to have these specific units, and there will be fewer units. However, we will do them very, very well, and they will be linked in such a cohesive way so that at the end, the children, there won't be any of this reteaching or review. There won't be that need to do that because it will be hopefully so strongly in place that teachers won't have to stop and do that. So it's about building the expertise of our staff, as well as having that collaboration where we can all work together to make sure that student learning is progressing and will be aligned to the new Smarter Balance. And we feel that if we can do that, CMT and CAP will take care of itself for the next couple of years.
The timeline for this implementation, for completing the curriculum discussion is
In the
over-
spring of 2013, and that would mean we would begin, once the board approves it, we would begin rolling it out to staff and doing professional development around it so that they would be ready to begin implementation in the fall.
Okay, and are there different textbooks or other things that are?
The resources is the next part that they're going to be working on, what resources, but there's really not a magical textbook out there that's aligned to the Common Core, so we are looking for a very rich task to go to support each unit. We will be drawing from multiple textbooks, and but as far as one kind of magic textbook, no, it will take several.
That 48 states or whatever have adopted a common core, and there is no textbook that aligns to how.
It depends on who answers the question. Every textbook company that is publishing now says that they are aligned with the Common
but
Core.
we're not convinced of that.
Well, the fact that none of the assessment tools have yet been designed to measure the standards, good backwards design tells us that you identify the goals, the standards, or the outcomes first. Then you identify the tool with which you will assess students' ability to get to those levels, and then you design the instruction and the tasks that will get you there. So, no, everybody's claiming that they have the new Common Core textbook, and we're not convinced. We're being very critical consumers, and we would rather, in fact, work with the materials that we have and make the adjustments that we need to make until we know that we can find something that meets our needs in service of the Common Core.
And it's not just us, the Common Core authors wrote the publisher's criteria where they spelled out what needs to be in these curriculum materials that is not there now, and you can Google it, and it's a 12-page document that spells out what's missing in current materials and encouraging schools not to adopt something new and to demand that publishers meet the needs of. So it's
I'd
not.
rather take last year's book and put a new cover on it.
Well, listen,
We got plenty of stickers that say Common Core aligned.
Yeah, well, that's true.
doesn't
But,
cut.
it would be troublesome to have you come to us with a big textbook purchase, and then, oh, by the way, we find out in a year or two that it really doesn't match the assessment.
But hopefully soon.
In fact, the publisher's criteria that she mentioned actually does sort of outline for a teacher how you can take regular resources and turn them into Common Core resources. And this is a lot of what the curriculum committee is doing. We're taking our current resources, bending them, twisting them, shaking them, and making them work.
And when do the assessments come in? Do they start next year, or in 2015? And will they be yearly? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
And we are doing everything that we can, not only to stay up to date in the development of those assessments, but to participate in the development of those assessments. Maria has been accepted as an item writer. All of our schools have volunteered to be pilot locations. We don't just want to know what's going on, we want to help shape what's going on.
So I guess, if I were thinking about this as a child who's in the schools now, I would see the biggest issue in terms of kids who may have had a certain topics covered and then phasing this in. There's different things that are being repeated. So is there particular issues with phasing or approaches that you're using to that, or how is it going to phase in over a period of years, do you think, or is it just going to go for it and put it in the way it's going to be?
Our plan is just going to go for it. Knowing that we have to pay attention to the needs of our students and to try to really work on depth as much as we can for those children that might have some prior experiences. But this adjustment it's pretty lofty goals, and I think it's going to be challenging for most students. And when I say most, I'm talking about the upper end. It's going to be very, very challenging, and we're going to have a lot of support for students who are not as proficient in mathematics. So as we begin the implementation, we will monitor and watch very closely and see if we need to make any adjustments along the way. So we don't want any child, of course, to be bored or any child to be frustrated. So we may have to be making some adjustments along the way, but we're hoping to, as we design it, just to jump right in and do it as well as we can. Given that we are taking our time, we're being very, very conscientious about how we're putting it together, how we're presenting it to you, how we're presenting it to staff, so that, we know this is going to be a quality product. And I know a lot of districts are watching us.
Well, along the same lines of your question, but the flip is curriculum that then gets skipped by somebody.
Right.
But I imagine we can identify what that's apt to be and spend some, I say we spend some time, I will be sitting here, you will be, but spending some time kind of identifying where those areas are in those
Yes, so
first
that
few
we don't
years.
create a gap.
Right, first few years will be catching up in some
We
places
acknowledge,
as well.
especially at the high school level, for example, quadratics is moving from Algebra 2 to Algebra 1.
Right.
So we
if
can't
a
miss
kid's
that
in Algebra
for-
2, they've just
Right.
missed, right. So there's
We
got to
have-
be a
we have
transition phase
contingency
for some of
plans.
this stuff. Right, okay.
And I apologize, I was thinking more at the elementary level or at the beginning, kindergarten and first grade, but at the high school and even at the middle
later
school,
elementary.
we are having to, really begin now transitioning.
Well,
over
as
to the
someone
Common
doing
Core.
pre-algebra with my son last night in 7th grade, right, I mean, some of that is definitely
seeing some
already
differences,
happening,
I bet.
right.
So,
right.
so we have already started as far as changing how we're teaching some of this information. We've started changing some of our tasks, knowing that we didn't want to wait until the curriculum was done and that we needed to start that work with teachers. So that piece has already begun.
Dr. Keene, I would also just like to add that within our PLCs, we work within professional learning communities at the high school level. And so this is an ongoing discussion and ongoing work that we're doing. I can say every week we're meeting within PLCs and we're looking at the standards and seeing how we can already affect what we're doing now in a way that aligns with the standards. And we have to keep track of what were students doing in previous courses, what will they be doing differently next year in this course based on their backgrounds. So we really have to keep very careful track of that, which is, I think, what you're asking about.
The curriculum documents you sent are up through grade 6, and they talk about the middle school program, but we're not affecting as much the high school curriculum,
No.
or is that the...
The ones that I sent, the high school is not complete.
Okay.
They're working through theirs as they go, but they will be ready when we, we'll get everything to you early prior to, but at the time, because I wanted to get it to you earlier rather than later, and it was really more about format and the way that it looks, and the understanding of what's a math practice standard versus what's a content standard, and some of the new pieces that are in here. But all the grades will be in the final document, and you will have it prior, several weeks prior to the, date that we present it to you. But we really wanted to have kind of this interim report to say, keep working on this, or we have some more questions. But we wanted to give you an opportunity to ask the questions now before we really invested too much time and effort around the task. Because creating the tasks that are going to be supporting the scaffolding tasks, the practice task, the performance task is going to be really the heart of the matter and a lot of the work. Because a rich task will define, our curriculum. Now that won't be public for parents and students to go and Google because we'll be using those. This is the part that will be public.
I'd say keep on working. It was helpful last month to have Maria come to go through the beginning stages and actually explain some of the process and examples, as well as part of where you skip certain things and you really delve into details. And then in reading through the middle school document you had where it talks about accelerated traditional, where you're putting 3 years into 2, then I'm reading that as the opposite of the elementary, where you're skipping certain things and delving into detail, because then you're talking about having Algebra 1 getting covered into the middle school curriculum and doing things more quickly, at least the document that describes it that way.
And I sent that because that was a question some people had, and that's just for those students who really and truly need that acceleration piece. And it's not that we're going to be going slower, we're going to be going deeper around those big concepts in elementary school. But there are some students who just really take off in mathematics, especially around the middle grades, and we wanted to give them that opportunity. So that whole idea of having some acceleration, but that piece will be part of the, the big plan we present to you.
So hearing more about that is in due course.
Right.
Is,
That'll be
appreciated.
part
Yeah.
of the next.
So thank you for your encouragement to keep moving forward.
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your work.
If it's okay with the board, I was going to go to the podium for the next portion, so I can take you through the PowerPoint slides. I do apologize for the length of my report this evening, but as we go through the next piece, which is the budget proposal, I thought it would be helpful for me to come to the podium and take you through the slides.
Katie, shift around over there.
Yeah, we did.
So, I think board members have the detail books, and what I'd like to do tonight is to take you through an overview of the budget proposal, how we came to the budget proposal, the large numbers, talk about where we are in large scale, and prepare for the follow-up meeting Thursday this week as we continue this conversation. But as I reminded the board last year, if I can get the... Any budget proposal needs to begin with the values of the school system. A budget document is in fact a values document. And we're not simply looking at this year's costs and rolling them forward into next year's costs. We begin by thinking about our vision and our mission for the school system. Our vision is built upon a professional learning community where we invite rigor for all students every day. We want to invite our students to work and to learn. We don't want to create a situation where we are demanding of them. We should be able to make them hungry for learning each and every day. We do that through working together as professionals and inviting them to come to the learning with us. Our mission is to foster excellence in a respectful and challenging academic environment. From that vision and mission, this board selected these 3 goals for this current school year. I'm particularly fond of our first goal, that all students will experience academic rigor every day in every class, and that we will be able to recognize that rigor through the implementation of our principles of learning, which we see in learning walks through the schools. We know that this year we have focused on curriculum and instruction and assessment to be sure that we continue to develop and align our work with the Common Core state standards. And when you look at Goal 1 and Goal 2, you see the wedding of our history with the principles of learning and the values that we've adopted in this district for the last 6 years, wedded to the work of the Common Core and where we know that we need to go. And in Goal 3, we know that it's our charge to provide our students with both an emotional, a psychological, as well as a physically safe environment. And from those goals, as we worked internally on the budget this year, we worked from a set of priorities. The simple fact is that we cannot afford to do everything that we want to do or that we would hope to do in this budget. The decisions that we make are bounded by fiscal realities. So when we need to make tough priority decisions, we knew that we were making decisions based first and foremost on the fact that school needs to be physically and emotionally safe. We need to continue our local focus on instruction and continue to provide PD that is focused on instruction, and more particularly in the short term, PD focused on the Common Core and how we are going to continue to teach in the way that we value, but in a way that will further our work towards the Common Core. We need locally to increase our capacity to support our educational students' needs here within the district, and that is something that we have talked about at this board level, I think at some length. And we need to continue to be innovative in using the resources that we have at our disposal to meet those goals. We need to look at what we have, and we need to be more creative in using what we have. So when we talk about our focus on instruction, or when we talk about building that local special ed capacity, or when we look at a culture-changing retirement like Mr. Pt1's, how we can repurpose that position and reassign responsibilities so that we can be creative in adapting to the demands that are being placed on us moving forward. And then we need to work with the fiscal realities that are demanded by our enrollment. We can only provide the services that are required by the students who walk in the doors. We need to be aware of our enrollment. And we will talk about enrollment in slightly more detail in a few more slides, but this slide is to give the big picture. I did send a more detailed Excel spreadsheet on enrollment and in fact class size to all board members, but this one is to show that essentially moving forward, while we continue to have some reduction in enrollment, it's a small reduction. Essentially our enrollment can be described as stable as we move from this school year into next school year. With that mission, that vision, those goals, and those priorities in place, the budget that we provide this year comes in at a total proposed budget of $54,709,186. That is an increase year over year of $1,795,294 more that we're requesting next year than is currently in our operating budget this year. That is an increase of 3.39%, just slightly under the approved budget from last year, the approved increase from last year. The balance of this budget goes to this presentation goes to explaining those numbers in large scale. I want to start by noting that there are several efficiencies in this budget of which we're very proud. I do want to note that this budget is built on a base salary line that is in fact a very positive number. Our base salary increase this year is 2.3%, and that includes some staffing enhancements that I'm going to mention. We have done well with the salary line for a number of reasons, one being a number of retirements that we experienced last year, thoughtful hiring from the principals as we refilled those retirement positions, as well as adjustments in staffing and looking carefully at how we use those resources. The medical line, we have done exceptionally well in medical benefits in this district. Our medical increase is less than 2% this year. Ms. Trudeau and Mr. Pt1 and I spent a lot of time this year looking at insurance consortiums and talking about the opportunity to buy collaboratively with some of our neighbors to achieve a better rate. And the fact is, we couldn't save money by participating in any of the consortia that were offered to us this year. We have done well in the medical line for a number of reasons, including first, that we've had positive medical experience in the last couple of years. We have renegotiated contracts to expect a greater cost share from all of the employees who partake in the medical benefits that we offer, and this board has seen fit to offer the opportunity to opt out, and we've got an incredibly positive medical line that goes into this budget request. And supply and equipment requests. The supply and equipment line goes up by approximately 2% this year and continues to keep that overall line item in the ballpark of 2008 and 2009 levels. I need to commend the principals because as they come to the table again with supply requests this year, they are prioritizing the teachers and the staff members who are in the buildings with their students over the materials and the supplies that we purchase. We will purchase what is needed for our students, but we do not have exorbitant increases in this line. It remains in 2008 and 2009 territory again this year as we move this budget forward. With those efficiencies taken into account, We also have drivers. There are certain costs associated with this budget that I thought it made sense to identify. The salary line I just identified as an efficiency. I said that we've done very well managing salary costs. However, we also have to acknowledge that salaries make up approximately 70% of our overall budget. It is the single most important investment that we make. And even at the increase we're at, we see an increase in salaries of $758,000. It's a significant portion of our budget. Even a small increase will have a real dollar effect. The same applies to medical benefits and other associated insurance benefits. While we have done very well containing those costs, they represent approximately 16% of our budget, and the increase there is $192,000. Special education tuition continues to be a driver in our budget requests. We had a significant increase in tuition last year. We continue this year. We are already projecting to run over budget in the tuition line. I will speak about the local investment that we are making so that we can control this cost and, more importantly, offer a greater opportunity to keep our children in their home district and to educate our children at home. But at this point, until that capacity can be built and can be established, we continue to have the need to meet the cost of the outplacements and the tuition line, and so we do have a significant increase there. And I want to note site improvements. For 2 years, last year we made a significant investment in site improvements of approximately $240,000. This year we're looking to make an investment of another $100,000 to make sure that we're taking care of the physical physical property that we have in the district. We need to maintain our buildings well. Mr. Ireland mentioned how we are beginning to see a decrease in energy costs. That is as a result of this type of investment. We believe that this investment this year brings our site improvement line to a level that is reasonable for the number of physical properties that we own. It's worth noting that those 4 lines together represent over $1.6 million of what is almost a $1.8 million increase. It is these 4 areas that are driving the increase in our budget that we request this year. And this is not a status quo budget. I want to be very clear, and I want to be very proud of the fact that we're not asking to continue doing what we already do. This budget does move us forward. This budget is an investment in our students. It's an investment in doing the Common Core state standards well so that our students are well positioned as we join 47 other states in this endeavor. It's an investment in moving the district forward, not just attempting to tread water. And therefore, there are some drivers in how we are trying to make those decisions moving forward. Each new request in this budget can be explained with 1 or 2 or 3 of these decision drivers. And again, as I've mentioned, we are looking to develop and grow our local capacity to meet the needs of more of our special education students here locally. We also intend to implement the state requirements for new teacher and principal evaluations well, and more importantly, we intend to implement the Common Core state standards well. I applaud the values that are embedded in the Common Core state standards. I believe that the instructional values embedded in those standards reflect the direction that Guilford was moving already, and we need to do that work well. I applaud the impetus behind the idea of improving evaluations for administrators and teachers in school districts. There are expectations, there are mandates that come with those changes in legislation, and we plan to both do that well and to maintain our local values as we do that. Having said that, then, this budget does include a number of new investments. We will be looking, as we launched an internal autism program for some of our youngest students this year, of which we're very proud and around which we continue to receive very good reviews and early feedback. We intend this next year to launch an alternative high school opportunity. We have outplacements that occur at the high school level as well. We have students who don't necessarily thrive in a large environment of 1,000 students every day. It is common for public school districts to offer an alternative to that high school program, and we're looking at providing an alternative high school program, one that would combine a daytime vocational opportunity with afternoon and evening academic classes. That is currently in the design phase. We do have plans to launch in this September, and there will be funding that is required to be able to do that well. For the last year, we have been working collaboratively with Madison and Clinton to design a transition program for some of our 18 to 21-year-old students. Again, a program that will have a strong focus on vocational skill as well as independent living skill. We are required to offer services in this age range. We offer those services now. We believe that we can offer those services better and more efficiently by collaborating with our neighbors and doing something like that locally. There will be funding that is required to help provide that program. Both of these are investments now that may develop and become efficiencies down the road. Both of these investments may help to control that tuition line that I've highlighted this year and that I highlighted last year. Additionally, we are asking for the addition of a special education coordinator. Several years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, we reduced a special education coordinator in the district. As we move forward on two fronts, as we move forward needing to implement the new state expectations around teacher evaluation, we will need to look carefully and thoughtfully at our administrative capacity. And more specifically for this position, as we look to bring local special ed capacity back home with an district-wide autism program, an alternative high school program, a regional transition program, we will need to have capacity to administer those programs as well. The special education coordinator request would support both the evaluation and the special education capacity that we speak to. We have done very well with the inclusion of literacy coaches at the elementary level. Over the last couple of years, we have worked very well with the literacy coaches who are embedded at the elementary level. In fact, you heard reference to their work multiple times tonight, not just from the administrative staff, but from students who saw the work of the literacy coaches in the marine animals unit and in the unit that we are embracing this year around child labor. This aligns very well with our work around the Common Core state standards. Additionally, new legislation this year changes the expectations for professional development from the state level. The state will now require that professional development offered at the school level be local, job embedded and specific to the work and the location of the teacher, as well as connected to the evaluation program. We need to continue to develop our ability to coach and do professional development in the real work. Professional development isn't something that you do twice a year where we give you a substitute and you go away. Professional development needs to be something to do that we can support every teacher with in her own classroom with her students in real time. The coaching model allows us to build on that. We're requesting 2 additional literacy coaches in the budget that you have before you. Additionally, we're talking about a technology integration specialist position. We are looking carefully at our technology department, both at the staffing in that department as well as the uses of those resources in general. And we know that we are evolving beyond the point where our technology specialists are a cadre of people who help us when our hardware breaks. They need to be people who can help us make instructional decisions in the classroom. So similar to a coach who can provide professional development in a classroom in real time, an instructional integration specialist will help us to make instructional decisions, to plan with teachers, to integrate new software into classrooms, to work at PPT and IEP level with assistive technology requests and assessments that need to be completed, and to collaborate closely with the curriculum office, because we're not simply going to be looking for somebody who reads all the latest blogs and goes to the Consumer Electronics Show and brings the most exciting gadgets home to us. We're looking for somebody who understands our instructional value and focus and can help us to live that instructional value in the classroom. We're requesting one position this year. I am willing to characterize this as a baby step. To do what I described cannot be done with our entire teaching staff, K through 12, but to begin to move in that direction, we're requesting one position this year. We're also requesting an additional math position at Adams Middle School. At this time, that position is a placeholder. We do not anticipate that that will be necessarily a direct instructional position. It may be along the lines of a coaching or support position. With the implementation of Common Core, Adams middle schools have always been at the nexus. Adams is placed in a situation where they are shifting students from elementary to high school. We have mentioned algebra and pre-algebra instruction on a couple of occasions. At this time, that is a salary placeholder. Dr. Keene, Mrs. Walker, and I are continuing to explore what that position may look like, but we do believe that it's going to be a necessary position. And as we've talked about our focus on literacy in the last several years, with the advent of Common Core, we don't have the luxury of focusing just on literacy. I believe that our investment and our focus was right at the time, but we have to balance both ends of literacy and numeracy, and at Adams Middle School, we're requesting that additional position. To balance that, or to at least look at that in a staffing slide, we've showed staffing this way. The three horizontal rows separate staffing requests into administrative level, certified teaching level, and non-certified level. So in this slide, we're talking about actual bodies. Please note that there's different categories there. But we are asking for an increase in administrative staffing in the special education coordinator that I've mentioned, and there is no offsetting reduction. I do not believe that we have the ability to reduce administrative staffing and reshape at this time. I do believe that with the growing of special education capacity, with the expectations of the new evaluation system, with the expectations of the changing professional development requirements, that we need to look carefully and thoughtfully at our administrative capacity. When you look in the teaching area, we are asking to add 2 certified literacy coaches. We are asking to add a math position, and we are looking to increase a transition coordinator from a half-time position to a full-time position. Our transition coordinator supports vocational placements. As we do that now on an individual basis, we'll also need to support the 18 to 21-year-old transition program that I've mentioned, as well as needing to support the alternative high school that I mentioned. So growing this position from half-time to full-time is necessary and may very well be an efficiency for us. There are changes or offsetting reductions in the teacher area. This year, we are currently running at 1.1 positions below the budgeted level. As we've made adjustments in staffing this year, we have not reached the allocated level. If you recall, at the end of last year, after the budget was passed, we came to you and talked about class size and showed some adjustments that were made in that level, and there have been other minor adjustments that were made this year. They net a 1.1 FTE below the budgeted level. We will be reducing a world language position at Adams Middle School. That is a result of careful look at class size and class loading. We believe that we can meet all the students' world language needs with 1 fewer FTEs in that department. We will also be reducing a computer class, a standalone pull-out computer class that is being offered as an elective at Adams currently. As I mentioned when I talked a little bit about the technology integration specialist, we need to continue to look at technology that is something that is infused and brought into each classroom every day, and we need to find ways to support that. We won't be supporting a pull-out computer class. And we have been able to make an adjustment of 0.2 FTEs at the elementary level in music staffing, and that is going to take place as we shift from the end of this year into next year. The net increase for teachers then is an increase of 0.2 positions in the teaching ranks that we are looking for. And then we are looking for the addition of that technology integration specialist. We expect that that would be a non-certified position. We're not seeing that as a certified teaching position. We're actually looking for somebody that we could pull out of the technology world, somebody who may have experience or past experience in teaching or education more broadly even would be a benefit, but we don't see that as a certified teaching position. So while we're looking to increase overall staff bodies by 5.5 positions this year, we also have offsetting decreases of 3.3. So it's a 2.2 overall increase, a slight increase in the teaching area with an increase of 1 position each in administration and in non-certified areas. Again, we continue to be a lighthouse school district. I will stack Guilford schools up against any other school district in the state on any given measure. Our academic performance, we've been recognized this year as an AP honor roll school. In the new state school ranking systems, we have been recognized with 3 schools of distinction. Academically, I would put our performance against any other school in the state. Graduation rates, college placements, the quality of arts that come out of this building, whether they be performing arts or out of the art studios, and the athletic program. And we continue to show growth and improvement while the world changes around us. Education is changing locally, at the state level, at the national level, and I continue to believe that not only do we respond to those changes well, but in many cases we have anticipated changes. The Common Core State Standards just aligns with the work that we've been doing for 6 years with our Principles of Learning in the Institute for Learning. This year, we have encouraged our administrators to be spending more time in classrooms and engaging in rich conversational, instructional discussions, instructional conversations with staff members, and that anticipates the work that we see in the evaluation work that we're being asked to do. And we continue to be, I believe, an unparalleled educational value. I know that Mr. Bloss speaks to this more articulately than I do, but when you look at the results that we net and when you look at the investment in school, we don't just do well, but we do very well at a very reasonable investment. Our challenge will be to continue to meet our mission and vision while we respond to economic realities and the changing realities of education. I expect to simply continue to improve student learning, to continue to achieve positive results, and to continue to do it at a value investment. I do not believe that this budget is an exorbitant request. I believe it is a prudent investment in our students moving forward. I know that we have another conversation scheduled for Thursday evening. I know that we have public hearings on this topic scheduled for the 28th and the 29th. But I also know that we may want to make some time to speak about this or begin the conversation about our budget proposal here tonight.
You know, what's the board's pleasure? We can chat about it a little bit tonight, but we do have lots of we have a lot of meetings scheduled with each other, obviously in the weeks coming up. But I think that at least with some tradition, we at least outline some issues that we'd like you to think about and maybe be prepared to offer some further information on or comments on moving forward.
When we held our preliminary budget hearing, there were a lot of people who talked about all-day kindergarten. And
Yes.
there were a lot of us on the board who were very interested in all-day kindergarten. And I don't see that here or in our budget books. So I know we can't launch into a long discussion about all-day kindergarten tonight, but it's something that I would appreciate hearing about, the pros and cons, the costs, and what would be your thoughts if we don't do it this year, when, and how would we go about approaching it? And so I'd like that to be on the agenda for Thursday or for one of the
Thank you for the
budget
question, Dr. Myers. I did intend to touch on that in the overview tonight. And the quick response is with the priority setting of building special education capacity, which I see as an immediate need, with the advent of Common Core State Standards that we need to be prepared for, and with the required implementation of the new evaluation systems in this coming July, the kindergarten was something that we looked at carefully, we ran costs on, and simply decided that with the more immediate needs that present themselves in those three areas, that kindergarten became very challenging to present in what I thought would be a palatable budget presentation. We can add kindergarten to this budget. It would be an increase of approximately 1% to add that to this budget request. In this budget, we have set aside dollars to continue the conversation, the work, and the study around full-day kindergarten. So we're not abandoning the conversation, and in fact, we have set aside a small dollar amount to identify a task force or a committee next year that would begin to look even deeper still at full-day kindergarten to answer some of the research questions that this board has asked for us. What would the long-term impacts of full-day kindergarten be on student achievement, not just the immediate impact on first grade, also to look at the actual scheduling for the day and how that could be rolled out. I do think that if we look at other cost drivers in this budget and get some of those controlled so that we don't continue to see increases to the level that we're seeing this year. If we could build capacity to slow the growth in the tuition line, for instance, it would make it more opportune to offer full-day kindergarten, if not yet next year, then in the following year. But it would also allow us to answer the question of performance more closely. We also learn more and more about Common Core with every passing month, and we will be able to respond more fully to the question about the need for full-day K or how full-day K may be rolled into the full equation once Common Core becomes more fully implemented. I did mention it in my cover letter in your budget book. I failed to mention it elsewhere, and I apologize for missing that tonight. That was an oversight.
I would like, maybe for Thursday, if possible, some clarification, because I went through this book fairly thoroughly last week, and when I look at salary positions under teachers, additions and reductions, I come up with different numbers than you're presenting. So for instance, in the book, I'm seeing reductions at 3 of the 4 elementary schools, which doesn't make sense to me given what you just said. I'm seeing increases in mathematics of 2.2 positions instead of 1.
And for tonight's presentation, I netted those out in one number and called
Okay.
it adjustments in the current year. So yes, I can go through that in greater detail on Thursday.
Okay.
Oh, so
because-
you're, like your math line, that's within the staffing reductions line?
Yeah, but
Yes.
even in like the elementary schools, it looks like that we have a 1.5 decrease in FTEs for 3 of the 4 schools and an increase of 0.5. And then when I even adjust for this staffing reduction 2012, 2013 of 3, I still come up with a 0.5 reduction in 3 of our 4 elementary schools.
I'd be happy to go, yes, I can go through that more
Because I
slowly
think
and more.
these details are fairly significant
Yes, they
and not making sense given what you just said.
When is the new special needs coordinator coming on? Jenny Brown is starting.
Virginia Brown is going to begin on February 4th and will most likely be joining us for at least one of the budget conversations moving forward. So while she won't be an official participant, she's looking forward to joining us for at least one of those conversations.
Yeah, I guess the thing, the first bullet item on your, what this budget is addressing, does have to do with special needs. And when we look at where some of the money's going, I mean, tuition certainly can be tough to control on a year-to-year basis. But we've also got, we're adding back in, I guess, a coordinator that we took away
a couple of years ago.
2 years ago.
2 or 3 years ago.
And we're adding a transition coordinator, we're adding paras to the Bright Connections program. So I guess, one of the things just for the ongoing discussion is I'd really like to see, what the plans are and how we, the report that we got from, on the special needs is that we're pretty out of line in terms of other DRGs, where, the amount that we're spending percentage-wise in this area. And they outlined a few areas that we could look at within that. So I know we don't have a our coordinator here yet, I mean, the special needs director here in place yet, so it kind of falls on you, I guess. But I'd really like to hear kind of what our plan is moving forward to address some of those things, even though understanding that may change to some degree. In other words, what parts of the budget are investments that we may hope to return, even if it's a few years down the line, in terms of decreasing outplacements if possible?
Right.
What will we anticipate for that? And particularly the need for another coordinator, which is a pretty significant expenditure from what I can tell.
Well, and the context is, we were told 3 years ago that we could reduce 2 coordinators by your predecessor.
Yes.
And we actually talked him out of that. But he thought that it could be done with I'm overstating it to some degree, but it was a close call, and he said, look, we'll try it with 1. But originally he thought so anyway, but that's, I think, an issue that we need to talk about.
I think it is an issue that we can talk about, and I only say here that 2 significant things have changed since that time.
True.
The evaluation system being one, and the really overtly articulated effort to build local capacity. If we are going to attempt to keep more of our students home and educate them here in the district, we can only do that by providing the appropriate programming for them here in the district. And I believe that we can do that better. We can eliminate the transportation that is required to send a student away to a placement that is outside of Guilford, and in time begin to recognize the control over that tuition line. But until we have a viable and in fact quality alternative that we can offer locally, we're not going to keep students here. We're going to continue to have to send them where we can meet their needs more appropriately. So we can absolutely spend lots of time talking about it. Ginny and I have spent a lot of time talking already, but that would be the quick answer.
Other things people want to raise tonight?
Just want, I mean, again, not the answer tonight, but one of the things that came up in our preliminary discussions was the effectiveness of our investment in world language. And I see that one of the things that you're doing is cutting a world language position or repositioning as far as the class sizes. And I'd just like to hear, what our process is for evaluating the effectiveness. Because, I mean, if it's either effective and we're fine, or it's not effective, and some of that maybe because we're not investing enough resources. But if it's not effective, we should be looking at that. I'd just like to hear the process that we're thinking about for, determining that and what we might look at.
Sure, we can do that.
I got a couple of things that I just asked you to put on your list. One is that the assumption on the excess cost grant reimbursement in this budget strikes me as really optimistic. For last, I mean, I know that that's what you're taking the numbers. Maybe I don't know what the base is. We're for this year's budget, we were assuming 19% of the $2.5 million. Next year's budget, we're assuming 25% reimbursement for $4.1 million. I think the odds of an increase is, I mean, I can understand how that could happen because of the particular outplacements.
Right, yeah, it has to do with the specific formula.
I'd like to have some real
Reassurance.
thought about whether that's a realistic number. I think we ought to just have a really careful review of the enrollment and what the effects are on staffing, not at the elementary schools and the middle schools. I was sort of surprised with these enrollment numbers, but 3 of our 3 highest classes are in 7th grade and below, in terms of largest classes are in 7th grade and below, which I frankly wasn't expecting somehow, But then again, our 1st grade is a relatively small class, but our 9th grade is a relatively small class. So we seem to be replacing small classes with not small classes, if not at least large classes. So I don't know, what does it look like? Do we need to, are there things we can do in terms of staffing with where the enrollment is? I had the same question as you did about the mathematics. We need some clarification on that. And I guess on Dr. Moore's question, I'd ask it maybe a little more broadly or narrowly, I don't know. But how does this budget reflect the recommendations in the futures report? and we'll talk about some other things, I suppose.
And if I can add one thing to that as well, this, the alternative high school idea, et cetera. I mean, I think that I do have concerns about recommendations in the futures report on staffing and then the amount of staffing we're adding. But also a sense that, so the Bright Horizons program, am I calling that correctly? Sorry. We started this year. We want to build on it for next year. We're now talking about an alternative high school proposal, et cetera. I would like a sense of a longer term than just next year in terms of a plan for how we think those might need to grow and what that might look like. Because if we're putting off, for instance, a full-day kindergarten conversation for a year, are we going to run into the same kind of, well, we can't afford it because we're doing other things problem next year? I mean, I think some long-term look here would be really wise, because I think that we have a number of proposed projects, some of which you're putting on in the budget this year, some of which we're thinking will wait on, but what is it going to look like next year and the year after? Yes. In terms of our thought process, because I'm just concerned that that we're putting a lot of energy into one area right now that's going to need to have more money as we go forward to keep it rolling, and I want to make sure we're making a careful decision about what that's going to look like for the other things that we think are important.
And that does impact on the question about the futures report in general. When we first discussed the futures report, we talked about the recommendations in that report and looking at them at immediate or short term, medium term, and long term, and what those approaches would look like. Mm-hmm. The idea of growing the special ed capacity is very intertwined with the full-day kindergarten component around space as well. If we're going to be growing special education programs here in the district, those need a place to be. And they often require space to be done well. So we've been trying to be very thoughtful about both the special ed programming and what that could mean for full-day K moving forward. If we have a rebound in the size of kindergarten classes, and if we've grown these programs, we know that there's going to be a relationship there. And we've had those conversations. So yes, we can continue to have that further as we move on to these conversations.
Okay, anything else for this evening?
I just want to say I'd like to piggyback on something that Katie said. I think I'm feeling a need that we should have a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan about how we're going to move ahead with our in-house autism and other programs. And we don't have that, so that each budget cycle we hear about new initiatives, but I'd like to have a broader view.
And that dovetails nicely with the arrival of Ginny Brown. Yes, to some degree we've been working through the hiring process here, but there is a broad plan, and we're happy to share that with you. Yep. We've already begun conversations about the autism program and how it will need to grow as our students begin to age into 4th grade. We've already started the conversation at Baldwin and about how, so these programs won't just grow in one school. These programs may grow across levels as well, and we've already begun that conversation.
I also get a little nervous, though I recognize the inability to predict extremely well when I hear things like, and we hope this will reduce our tuition line in the next few years. To the extent that we can do some kind of identification of measuring outcomes as we move forward and identifying that's going to be important. I mean, to add almost $600,000 to the budget this year for outplacements, while we also put additional money into trying to keep people in-house, is understandable as you start, is going to be problematic in 3 and 4 and 5 years.
Yes.
Highly problematic. So.
Right, and so part of the logic is that tuition growth simply won't continue, and it may not be something that we see as a recognized savings, but it will be something that we can recognize as cost avoidance in the future. If we have local options to offer, As new students come in needing alternative programming, we will have a local option that we can offer to those students, and therefore we will be avoiding outplacements in the future. So right, both can't continue to grow at the rate at which they're growing. If tuition is going to continue to grow at that rate, then the local investment makes no sense. Again, though, I'll go back to the point that part of that isn't just about the finances of it. We also need to recognize that it's part of our obligation to educate as many of our students in the home district as we can. We can't continue to do that at just this uncontrolled rate of growth, but we need to do it first because it's the right thing to do, and secondly, because we should recognize efficiencies if we do it well.
I've got to ask you to take a break because we need to change the disc.
I think we were about wrapping that part up anyway.
I don't know.